Just this last Sunday, we celebrated Easter, and I'm wondering if we can just stay in this Easter story for a little bit. Jesus is risen. He is risen indeed, and it changes everything. So I just wanted to share my heart today and a little bit of our story. I pray that it would bring you hope and encouragement. I pray that God would meet you right where you are. So a few years ago, we were going through a really difficult time as a family. Our daughter was very, very sick. And as we brought her home from the hospital, the doctors instructed us to keep her under quarantine because she had no immune system and she was still very sick. So we started this new way of life, keeping her isolated, keeping ourselves isolated in order to keep her safe. And so there was some adrenaline, I think, from that initial crisis phase in the beginning, in those first few weeks and months that helped us get through. But as time began to draw on and we began to see that this was going to take a lot longer than we had ever anticipated, as she wasn't really getting better as fast as we had hoped, and we weren't getting the answers that we needed to help her. And she was still very much in pain and suffering. We kind of began the next phase of this quarantine time as a family. And the adrenaline began to wear off, and we began to feel discouraged and frustrated and sad and alone. And so one day there was a knock at the door. And we were super excited because we didn't get very many knocks at the door in this life of quarantine, as you know, we all can relate to that now. And we went to the door, and there were friends standing on our porch that we hadn't seen in a while, friends from the neighborhood. We were super excited to see them, and there was a little flutter in my heart to the excitement that they were there to see us. And so we said hello, and they asked how we were doing, and we invited them in. And they said, no, we just, we were out for a walk. We happened to be going by your house, and a kind of storm rolled through. There was some lightning, and so we took shelter on your porch. But we really need to get going now. So we said goodbye and shut the door. And my heart sank right to the floor. I was filled with sadness, and I was crushed. And I realized in that moment that we were in desperate need of company in this time of suffering. And there were no hard feelings. They were just on a walk. But God really used that to point out a need that was in us that maybe we couldn't even verbalize to that point, that we really needed to know that we weren't alone. We needed to know that someone would sit with us in our pain. And so a few weeks after that, we got a phone call from some friends, and from out of state, and they said, hey, we are on the East Coast and we are passing by the thruway that is near your house. We'd love to take a detour and come see you. And of course we said, yes, come see us. That would be great. And so they came to see us, and they came in and they sat with us in our living room, and they looked at us and they said, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And they listened, and we were able to share from our heart how we were feeling. We were able to share our pain, and they listened. They prayed with us. They sat with us. And in a way, it felt like we had company in the waiting. We had company in our suffering. And that was God's gift to us, and his way of saying to us, I see you, I love you, I am with you, and you are not alone. And so today I just want to ask you, how are you doing? How are you feeling? We're over a month into this quarantine, and maybe you're feeling like we were feeling when our daughter was sick, that we've kind of entered another phase to this whole quarantine life. And if you're anything like what's, our family and what's been happening in our home, is in the last week, we've had a lot of feelings and emotions brought on by a lot of the loss and grief that is around us. Been feeling frustrated and sad and discouraged. And I just want you to know that if you are feeling that way, you are not alone. and it's okay. Our God sees you, and He loves you, and He is with you. And we can come back to the Easter story over and over and over again when we feel lonely, when we feel doubt, because it is in that story that we find hope and we find comfort. You know, after Jesus had died and He was buried, the disciples were afraid and they were hiding. God sent Mary to them to say, Jesus is risen. He is alive. But they didn't believe her. They continued to hide and be afraid. But Jesus didn't leave them there. He came to them. He came to them right where they were. He met them right where they were, right in the middle of all that they were feeling. He showed up. He showed up. And He didn't shame them for feeling the way they did. He brought comfort. He said, peace be with you. He was present with them right where they were. And in His kindness and His love, He brought comfort and assurance. And God has that for us today. Today, now, as we are going through this very challenging time, He says to us, peace be with you. He says, I am with you. And as resurrection people, we can bring the living God to others. We can show up for them. We can encourage them. We can listen. We can go beyond the front porch, right to where they're at. And we can say, how are you feeling? How are you doing? What do you need during this time? We can be intentional in the way that we walk with others in this time. And now more than ever, we are in this together. We are in this together. And I know we're supposed to be social distancing, so we can't actually just show up and go into people's living rooms, but we can definitely be present in people's lives. We can definitely be the ones to say, I see you, you are loved, you are not alone. And we can do that by phone, we can do that by email. And so I just want to encourage you today. I want to encourage you that we are resurrection people. We have been given new life, and we have a living God who is with us, who sees our needs, who sees our pain, and meets us right where we're at. And so, friends, I want to just leave you with this. Jesus is risen. He is risen indeed. And He is saying to you, I am with you. I love you. Peace be with you.